Well, this is an astro-free zone today, kids. Hi, welcome. I am back. It is the first week, ending the first week of August of 2023. Today is the 4th, it's Friday, and I am recording this in just about a month's time, so I feel like this might actually be a reasonably sized episode today. Welcome if you're new, welcome back if you're returning. My name is Jennifer, and I am the Curly Stitcher on Instagram and here on YouTube. And my pronouns are she, her. And I am coming to you today to bring some updates on what I've been working on. This primarily is a craft related channel, mostly cross stitch, knitting, crochet, every once in a while some sewing, but I dabble in a little bit of everything, so you never know. Today I'll be hitting the crafts that I work on a regular basis, so I'm glad you're here with me. I will get started. This first little section I will cover cross stitch, and then I'll get to my little bit of knitting that I've done and other yarn related stuff, and then I'll wrap up with some little bit of investments at the end and highlight some makers that I thought I'd share with you that maybe you might be interested in their artistic endeavors as well. So let's start with my cross stitching, and I'm just gonna kind of go in chronological order. For those of y'all that probably watch me fairly regularly, I'm usually looking down. It's because I keep a manual, a paper journal for the most part, just to collect all my thoughts and to remind myself of what I've done over the course of, any given month or week. So I usually use this as a reference, primarily to remind myself of all the times that I worked on a project, but also to remind myself of the things that I worked on. This month in particular, I was pretty, I stuck to just a couple of projects, so I'm able to kind of share with you pretty easily, remember what I've done over the last month. But there are some months where I kind of touch a little bit of everything, or I go down a rabbit hole with a project and I never come back to the things that I started at the beginning of the month, that kind of thing. So let's do that. Like I said, most of this will be chronological, but primarily it'll just be, hitting the highlights of things that I've done this month. So I think the last time I left you was actually like the first week in July, so I'm kind of proud of myself that I made it back so quickly. And there were, I had a couple of finishes, which was kind of exciting. This first half of this year was not very finish heavy at all. I mean, some small stuff, quick stuff. But I realized that so much had happened over, the first half of the year that I had to remind myself that life kind of took over at a point. So I'm not concerned or beating myself up over it, but it just kind of made me realize that I hadn't had a lot, accomplished or completed or finished. So this month was actually kind of exciting that I had a couple of finishes. So I will start with those. The first one was actually, the first one is actually what I told you all about last month. That was going to be my July Stitch for Pride piece that I finished. So this is Ultraviolets by Barbara Anna. It is a conversion that I did on with Roxy Floss Co. If you follow me on Instagram, and all that information will be below. If you want to know the colors that I used, I always list my conversions in my Instagram posts. So but I tried to stay pretty true to the original. Like, all I tried to do was either eyeball looking at the picture to see. So like for instance, the mock-up on the pattern is a really bright kind of turquoisey blue background. So I knew I had to be careful because there were some blues in here that I needed to make sure that showed up kind of well. Plus like this, not that one, this color right here, actually it may be the same taupey kind of brown color, was, you know, in certain parts I had to make sure that the color that I chose, like there's a bright white and then there's kind of an off-white. I had to make sure that brown that I had that I thought would look good for the triangle portion was dark enough that you could see like his fangs and then the detailing around his eyes and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I'm really, really happy. I will say, not that you all would know unless you've stitched it yourself, I did fudge a little bit because of, this is a 6-inch hoop, and I was pretty sure when I measured it, or did my fabric calculation, that this was going to fit on a 6-inch hoop, and it does. But there was a little bit of edge issue that came really close, and somehow between moving the fabric around, which it would have fit if I had stitched it properly, but in moving the fabric around and stitching, not paying attention to my stitches, I got off track a little bit, but I realized it fit the hoop a little bit better, so I left it. I just made sure that my gear down here, my little cog, was symmetrical, because it was in the pattern as well. So other than that, this little mousey is really, really cute. I couldn't be happier with it. It's really adorable. So yeah, it's just a yellow, and I was just going to keep it on the yellow hoop, but I had this real cute fringy. So to me, that's a little bit better. The shadow's still not great, but to me, the fringe, and it goes all the way around, there we go, you can kind of see it there. The fringe reminds me of like the cogs in the gear, you know, the teeth in the wheels, but it also reminds me of in the movie, if you know Malcolm McDowell's character, that's the main character in the movie, he has these really kind of dramatic eyelashes. So this edging kind of trim kind of reminded me of that too. So I added that to it. I can't quite decide if I mean, I don't dislike it, but it's, I don't know. I'm still kind of in my mind. So a lot of these, I typically just finish, like in this case, because the trim is glued to the plastic hoop. I will, like in this case, if I'm not completely sure that I like the trim or whatever, I will use hot glue, because I have learned, and this was something I learned, 20-30 years ago, you can take a hot hairdryer and basically melt. A lot of people use hair dryers when they're using hot glue. So here in Texas, in the fall, homecoming is a big thing, and it's kind of just a thing here. I realized a few years back, but we have the giant homecoming mums. I don't know what else to call them, but they're huge. They're ribbons, and they have ribbons hanging all the way down. The girls wear them to school, high school, all day long, and they've got like cowbells on them. I mean, they're gaudy. They're really, really gaudy. But anyway, in making those, you use a ton of hot glue. Well, you always end up having like the strands, you know, as you pull the hot glue away and it cools and it just kind of becomes like the spider webby kind of whatever. If you use a hairdryer, that heat will kind of remelt and lay down with the air current, lay those strings down into where they kind of more or less disappear or become part of the project to where you can't see it anymore. Anyway, so all that to say, when doing projects like this, and I'm not entirely sure that this is what I want to do and I don't want it to be too permanent, I will actually use hot glue for that reason, because the hot glue, the hairdryer will also, because it heats up and kind of remelts the hot glue a lot of times, then you can remove your trim and kind of clean up your hot glue residue and do something different. So I had considered actually, just like I said, leaving this on the, just leaving the yellow hoop as the finish, but I just kind of like this trim. Like I said, I just can't decide if that's really what I want to finish it, or I want this to be my final finish. But anyway, so I finished that. That was one finish for the month. And then, kind of speaking of Stitch for Pride, Dee's 20 Stitches released their third Let's Make a Statement. And I had done the first statement right after they released it, and it was during June, during Pride Month, but since then they'd released number 2, which I have not stitched yet, but I keep all of my materials. I have a big piece of linen, blue linen, that I've been stitching on, as well as the threads that I've actually been using have been from a sulky pack from a couple of years ago from Expo, I guess. What was Expo? But anyway, so I keep them all together. So I had everything together, and then Dee, probably towards the end of June, maybe, released number 2, maybe the first part of July. I'm going to say before June was up. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, Dee may have released all 3 of these. Like this third one may have been released right before the end of the month or right at the beginning of July. But anyway, all that to say, they've released 3. I have stitched 1 and I have stitched 3. And I finished both. 1 has been finished for a while, but I've stitched and finished 3 in July as well. So this is Queer Liberation Will Not Come from Rainbow Capitalism. So that is my finish, and I just do a little felt back. So that's number 3. This is number 1. Trans rights are worth more than boy wizards. Basically, they are, so far, they are all the same size. So if you decide you want to do this bunting type style, or this, kind of shield shape, if you make one and you figure out the size, you should be able to make them all pretty close to identical. Now it's obvious number 3, there's quite a bit more going on, but if you get your dimensions how you want them, then they turn out pretty well. But yeah, definitely they're almost identical in shape and size. So it's slightly bigger, but you really can't, it's negligible. So this one, same thing, felt back, and then I had done this little, this is actually 3 different pieces of trim that I had small that I braided. So this one, I just did that, silver cording all the way around, and I think it looks really good too. And these will just be, they'll hang up. I've had them hanging, back here on my shelf, my wire shelf. So this one was really quick to stitch too. This one, if I remember correctly, Michelle G, Bendy Stitchy, and a couple of other folks had said that they were going to start this one as a SAL. And I want to say, I'm looking at my journal because I think I started it that day, which was Wednesday, July 26th. And I had it finished by that weekend, that Sunday. I had it FFO'd. So it really doesn't take very long, especially if you're, pretty monogamous with it and it's kind of the only thing you do. I think I took a couple of breaks, worked on a couple of other things, but not really. I mean, I really kind of wanted to get this done, so I was really super kind of excited about it. And so I mentioned I used Sulky. It's a Sulky 12 weight, except for this see better on this one. Yeah, a little bit. You can see the sparkle here. The yellow is actually a DMC Etoile. It's C725, I want to say. If you have Dee's Transpride Tapestry buckle, yeah, the buckle on the collar is in this same color. So basically I pulled, since I was stitching on that too, but that's a big old project and it's going to take me a while. I went ahead and pulled it out for these, so I'm keeping it with these for now until I get to the buckle. And it's pretty big. It's a lot of stitches, but that's the only spot on that pattern, so I know where it is when I need it. But yeah, but other than that, so the sulky is actually from the Moo the Merrier pack that like I said, I think was Expo a couple of years ago when they did all the patterns and you just had the sulky pack that you stitched from. So the blue, or the blue is blue, the green, the white, and then the pink is actually a variegated, so it fades from a very, very, very pale to a darker pink. So yeah, it looks really, really good. And the green, if I didn't say that already, the green. But yeah, they all came from the same sulky pack, so I am super thrilled because that means I can just keep stitching them. And Dee's promised us many, many more, and I've got it all ready to go for number 2 when I get to it. I just haven't. I definitely want to stitch it. This one just, I guess for whatever reason, because everybody was kind of geared up to sell this one together here at the end of the month, it was just kind of lit the fire underneath me to get going. So I just need to go back and stitch number 2. So it's definitely on my list of things to do for sure. Okay, so those were my 2 finishes. The other thing, 2 other things that I've been working on that I think I both started, 3 more things that I've been working on this month, cross-stitch related, that I think all 3 of them I started this month was, I showed you all on my last episode that I had received the Ink Circles, the 3rd section of the Ink Circles Most Magnificent Ink Circles Round Robin. So I will show you, I did do just a hair bit of stitching on it, but I will show you what I did. So the first 2 quadrants, of course, are completed, and then I did this little bit of this dragon tail and part of maybe a head right here. So I did a few stitches. I got a few stitches in. I think I mentioned this was going to be my work, take it to work and work on it project. Now that it's August, now that I only have 2 months left to do this, that's probably not going to happen. I mean, I'll take it to work with me, but I can't just stitch on it at work. Because I don't always take a lunch. I only go to the office 2 days a week. And yeah, this definitely needs to get done. And this is, I wouldn't say this is a lot more, but this, I think, as an optical illusion maybe, this seems like more stitches than the other ones that I've done so far. But I really don't think that the number of stitches is really all that different. But yeah, really, really pretty. So I'm excited. I did at least get that started. I just haven't gotten much further than that. And you kind of tell yourself, well, you got plenty of time. And then, you know, the week or 2 leading up to mailing it on to your next partner comes, and then you've like panic stitch it, which is kind of what I ended up doing last time. And I don't want, actually, I didn't do that both times. Mine, the very first, you know, the first quadrant of mine before I passed it along, I had most of it done, but then it just sat, it lingered, and then I had to, like, you know, pull it back out in like that last week, or 2 weeks leading up to mailing it out. I had to get the last few stitches of mine done, which didn't take very long, and then I sat on it for the rest of the last week and barely got out in the mail on time. The last one, the second quadrant, that one because life really got in the way. I got a little bit done right in the beginning, and then it just sat. And then I kind of had to get my butt in gear and stitch the rest of it. So I don't want that to happen again, but it is already August, so we'll see. But I did get started on that. Then, this last month was, if everybody, I'm sure everybody that follows me probably knows about Sage with Night Spirit Studio and the personal situation that they're going through. So everybody went out, and I think the Witchy Stitcher kind of got involved in heading up a campaign, if you will, to support Sage in buying buying patterns of theirs, buying merchandise, which I did do that. I bought a t-shirt and a couple other things, but I bought a couple of patterns. Going out, showing Sage love, sharing projects, Night Spirit Studio projects that either you've completed or you're working on or whatever, just to kind of just flood the internet with Night Spirit Studio stuff. So in my purchases, I'll put up the picture here. I actually bought, I want to say like 3 more patterns, but I actually started one, and because it was a monochrome, more or less monochrome, black and white piece, I knew it would be easy to find something to stitch it on. I just had to kind of make up my mind. Did I want to go with, a really modeled fabric or something a little more tonal? So that's actually what I ended up doing, was a tonal fabric. This happened to be one of my more recent, this is April Fabric of the Month, Fiberlicious eucalyptus flowers that I got, 32 count. So that's what I decided, because green is kind of one of my favorite colors, and this is looking really good. So there is, and it's not very big, obviously. I mean, this is the midway kind of point. So yeah, so I'm really, really super happy with this. I stitched on this quite a bit this month, and it's not, I think the total stitches are about 1,600 roughly. It may not be quite that much. I ended up putting it in the Markup RXP app on my iPad, which is what I'm recording this on, which is why I'm pointing at you. But I think 1,600 is pretty close to right. The problem was I don't know the app well enough to where when you're doing a manual upload and you're telling it the dimensions and you're setting the, it's not something that the program automatically reads properly. Somewhere in there I noticed the grid lines are off. The x-axis lines are off, and it looks like for the second half of the page, the pattern, there's like, for every row of squares there's a little teeny tiny row. So I don't know if it's actually counting all of those additional as like stitches or not. So if it is, it may not be quite 1,600, because it, like I said, it's the whole like second half, like from here over, all of these stitches are all almost doubled. So anyway, all that to say, this is not a very big pattern. I was very happy to buy it. I'm hoping to be done with it probably maybe in another month, assuming that I can keep up with this the way I have been. But I did want to tell you, so I'm at about 30, this says 38%, so let's say 40 maybe, if, I've got some doubled up stitches that aren't really going to matter in the larger scheme of things. But yeah, I've put about 500 stitches into it so far. So, or actually, I think when I put this, so I'm also using, and we'll get to this later, but Natis Notions app template. So I'm looking at my numbers. When I put this in, my starting point, I had about 100 stitches into it. But since that beginning, I've stitched another 508. So total, I've stitched about 600 plus stitches. So, but yeah, I really like it a lot, and I love this green. And I know that the little white flowers are really gonna pop on this too when I get those in, and that'll be. It's all black except for the little white flowers, so that will definitely be one of those things where the white, once I'm done with the white, I'm done, because it'll be the final thing that I'll do after doing all the black stitching. So all that to say that the other thing that I started, so started Anxiety on the 11th of July. And then the only other thing I started, which I started like just this last week, I think. Yep, on the 31st. So I think over the weekend, I want to say July 30th, the Long Distance Stitchers, Megan and Megan, as well as Michelle G, Bendy Stitchy, all decided to start the Judgy Caterpillar Burb Sow, which, if you aren't familiar with that, is basically a hashtag that was created by them because Kaylee Tent Stitch, who has a store called the sewingshop.ca. She's in Canada. She does these adorable project bags, which are actually like squared off, kind of box shaped, with vinyl covers. She put together these fantastic kits of patterns based on artwork that a friend of hers, Brooklyn Stormy, designs artwork. And you can actually follow Brooklyn Stormy on Instagram as well, but they also have a website, and they're also Canadian. So, Kaylee Tent Stitch, there you go. That's her, the sewingshop.ca. You can go out and find an entire put together kit of, there are a bunch of these Brooklyn Stormy designs, artwork that Kaylee has converted to cross stitch. But the Judgy Caterpillar Burb Sow, this is the burb portion. The Judgy is a girl, if I can find it, I'll put it up here, a girl that's kind of looks very judgy. But I think she's got a bird on her on that pattern, on that piece too. The caterpillar is Caterpillar Lad, which is the one that I know one of the Megans is doing, and I think is the one that Michelle is doing. But then there were some others. These were kind of the first three, but there's one with a cat, and it's like it's kind of hard to tell if it's a giant cat with a regular sized person riding on the back, or if it's a regular sized house cat with a tiny person riding on the back. But that one, there's a bunch of them. So we're all doing this together. Again, this was kind of decided that this would be, they were going to start this sale on the 30th, and I couldn't, I was getting some things wrapped up that weekend, so I kind of had to wait until, that Monday, but it didn't take me long. But, so, when you got the kit, you got, and I can't show you because this is the paper pattern, but you got the entire paper pattern printed, and I showed you the artwork to cover. You got, if you opted for the bag, you got a project bag with it. Kaylee went so far as to create these fantastic floss cards for all the, this tells you the, you know, the symbol on your chart, which this is, you know, this is mine, but there's also a lighter colored version. The symbols on the chart and the matching corresponding DMC, and of course it's DMC, so if something happens or you need more, but I think she's given us all plenty to use. So there was that, and they're laminated. But then in addition, she also put these really amazing, this is a scrap of fabric, and there was a needle included on the fabric. So you had everything but a pair of scissors. And honestly, you could just leave your tails on the back of your project till you were done, and you wouldn't even need a pair of scissors. You could just keep stitching and stitching and stitching. So it's absolutely freaking amazing. This is like basically a kit like to go for travel. Come to find out, I think Michelle pointed out that because these are box style project bags, that a Q-snap will fit in them, no problem whatsoever, which I think is absolutely amazing. So if you're a Q-snap stitcher, you shouldn't have a problem with that at all. I'm struggling just to try to get all this back in this bag, and I don't know why, because I know it all fits. But then in addition to all of that, you also got a piece of fabric. And I can't remember if you got to select, like in my case there was a dark version and a light version, but I know you got to select whether or not you wanted your pattern with or without the background. And I chose without. So, and I got the dark, so if that was a choice. But that is my start. And that's the little, I did a center start, so that is this bird right here, and then this little plant right there next to his beak. So that's the bird I started. And it's fantastic. And because I'm not accustomed to stitching paper patterns, I really do prefer doing something digital that I could zoom in and you know, select, you know, help it count stitches for me, and you know, black out or gray out stitches as I get them done. Just a little tip, I wasn't paying any attention. Let's see if I can do this. Here we go. And if you notice, there are 4 dark blue stitches on each corner of the eye. Those are basically, in knitting terms, they would be called duplicate stitches. Basically, I didn't realize they weren't the same color blue, lighter blue, so I just stitched right over the lighter blue. Can't even tell. So yeah, if you mess up, as long as you're not trying to stitch like white over, you know, black or something like that, where the contrast might be obvious, and even in those cases, sometimes if your thread is thick enough, you probably cover that up too. But I'm just letting you know, if you mess up and you just need to stitch 4 stitches or 2, actually I caught myself, and 2 of them were not duplicate. 2 of them are original stitches, but the other 2 weren't. And again, you can't tell which 2 were which, so I was absolutely tickled that worked out really well. So so yeah, that is all of my stitching for the month of July. So let me put some of this stuff up, and I will be right back, and we will talk about knitting. Okay, so as far as knitting goes, I'm kind of a repeat one project person right now. This is, y'all have seen it before, you're going to see it probably a couple more times before I get it done. My Boneyard shawl. I am trucking right along on it. It's a little bit bigger, not a lot, but a little bit. I think since the last time, I got these two additional rows right here done. So I've got 2 more of those, and then I start on the garter. on the edge. So here, I was saying, actually, technically, it should be like this. Ta-da! So it's a little bit bigger, and I am definitely running out of needle space, but it's squishy, so it does really well. So, but yeah, I'm slowly chugging along at this, just because it's not, as it gets bigger, it takes a little bit longer and a little bit longer to get done. For those of y'all that met Astro last month, he doesn't take too kindly to let me knit just a whole lot before he has to intervene, because he's not getting attention. And I watch the Knit Girls on YouTube. It's Knit Girls with 3 L's. And they like to sit and knit while they're discussing what projects they've worked on or whatever. And a couple of times it's been on the big TV in the living room, and he'll go up and actually like paw at there while they're sitting there knitting. So that kind of led me to believe that it was not going to be something that was going to be tolerated for very long. So usually I either have to wait till he takes a nap, or in the case of this past month, I went and saw the Indiana Jones movie the weekend after opening weekend, and I actually took that with me. Got like 2 rows done in the dark, because it was like, I thought it was going to be my only way of getting anything worked on. Because I thought I was gonna have to take it with me everywhere. Every time I had an appointment or something like that, I was gonna have to take it with me, or take it to work and work on it at work, because I didn't think he would tolerate. But I have managed to get that much done, mostly, other than what I did at the movie, primarily here at home, just because he, like I said, I'll wait until he's sacked out in full nap mode, and then I can pull it out, and I might not get very much done. Like, I think one day last week I got like half of a row done, and then I had to put it down because he figured out that I was in the middle of something that he had to come and see. But then he went back and laid down for a bit, and then I was able to get the other half of that row done and come back the other direction. So that was it. But that's the only knitting project that I've worked on, started, any of that. So that keeps it kind of brief on that end. So, but I will segue into a little bit of investment that I've made, along with, I'll, like I mentioned at the beginning, I want to highlight a couple of people that have some things that I've purchased from them, just to, give them some love here. I know there aren't very many of you, but if any of you are interested, want you to know about them. The first thing I will mention, though, since we are discussing knitting, is Disturbing the Fleece, Fatima Hines. If you're familiar with her at all, she is a knitwear designer, but she is also a very radical activist. So when she designs, puts patterns out there for sale, typically, at least in the beginning, sometimes the entire ride of the pattern, she will, or the entire life of selling the pattern, she will donate proceeds, if not all of the pattern, purchase price to an organization. So, in this case, this is the Red Rocks Blue Sky Shawl. I want to pull this up because I want to make sure I get the information correct. But she's designed this so that the 100% of the proceeds from the pattern, her pattern sales, goes to Black Trans Women Inc. Incorporated. So this, her Instagram feed comes across my radar all the time. But she paired up with Distortion Fibers, which is a yarn dyer, and Two Sheeps, which is a store, and put a kit together. So this is the yarn. It's a DK weight. It is called Vortex. It is a 100% superwash merino 3-ply. And yeah, it is absolutely gorgeous. So I can't wait. In sharing it in my Instagram stories, and I'm definitely going to share the information down below, not only to the shop, but if you, and I think the shop is selling just the pattern as well, so I will put 2 links down below. I will put the link for the full kit if they have any left. I hope they sold out. I want them to sell out. But if they have any kits left, where you can get the kit. But I think also the shop is selling just the pattern. So if you have a color, 2 skeins of a DK weight yarn, that this is 100 grams, 231 yards. And that's, as far as I know, this is all we need for this pattern, is these two. If you have a DK weight yarn maybe that you've been holding on to for something special, you can still just go out to Two Sheeps and buy just the pattern. And again, the pattern itself, the entire proceeds from the pattern go to Black Trans Women Incorporated. So, all that to say that when I shared it in my Instagram stories, Michelle Garrett, Bendy Stitchy, reached out to me and she was like, oh, I'm so in on this. Do you want to do a cowl? And I was like, yes, I do. So that is our plan. Tentative for sometime in the not too distant future. Michelle has got a test knit that she's doing for Julicious, Julia. And so until she gets that test knit done, I don't want her worrying about another knit project. I mean, I'm still working on my shawl, so I'm not that I'm not ready to start this, but I've got plenty of other things to work on. So I told Michelle as soon as she's done with her test knit to let me know, and yeah, we'll set a date. So if you are interested in joining us, like I said, I will have the information for the pattern. I'll have the information for the shop below where you can get the full kit if you like that color. And join us. And as soon as I know a date, you know, my Instagram information will be down below. I'll put Michelle's information down below as well. Keep an eye out because I'm sure we'll be posting on social media when we get ready to start this, so you can start along. But you've got time. Believe me, you've got time. If I had to guess, most test knits, I don't know what Michelle's test knitting, like as far as what kind of, I think she mentioned that it was, her test knit was also a DK, but I can't remember what she said it was, if it was a cowl or a hat or a shawl, I don't know. But test knits usually take, you know, anywhere from like 2 to 4 weeks depending on, you know, the project, and longer than that if it's, you know, sweater size, but I don't think that's what she's doing. But so I can't imagine we will be starting anytime in the very near future. I would say look towards like the end of August probably at the earliest, but just keep an eye out, and I'll definitely keep y'all updated here. If we haven't started it yet, I'll let you know when I'm back. But in the meantime, yeah, please, and go follow Fatima on Instagram because she's an amazing human being. She does so much activist work. She does so much educational work, putting thought and care into educating others about inclusion and diversity, and not just for you know, people of color, not just for 2S LGBTQIA plus folks, but for disabled folks, for, you know, everyone. And she had a really good post here recently that's been kind of made the rounds a little bit regarding that specifically, that if you're creating an environment, a space for people to come, and you want to be all inclusive, you not only need to worry about that the language and that the conversations had in the space are safe conversations, that they are welcoming conversations, that people feel like they're included, that they feel like they're thought of and cared about in that space, but that, for those that are disabled, have you got a space where disabled people can visit, that, you have wheelchair ramps, that you have ASL, that you have, Braille, or you have, whatever another person might need, large print, something like that, that your space lets any person know that they are welcome, just depending on whatever their needs are, that their needs are being met. So, yeah, it was absolutely fantastic Instagram post. So, okay, so I made that purchase. Look to that for a future knitted project down the road. Another thing I purchased, your friend and mine, Jessie of Mislaid Pages, put a bunch of fabric up on their shop in the beginning it was for her Patreon members, but then they put up, they also, I think, eventually opened up the shop to everyone. So I will take a look. I will always link Jessie's shop down below, but I will make sure that there may not be any fabric left, y'all, but I'm pretty sure there's probably a few. I'll put it this way: Jessie's always got fabric on their page, but they may not have any of these pieces left, because I think most of us that were Patreon members kind of grabbed up what we wanted right away. So if there is much left, it's probably either counts that'll not a lot of people stitch on, or maybe it's counts that Jessie dyed a lot of fabric, a lot of color options. So I will briefly show you, because I was kind of going with the higher count, and Jessie was very accommodating in that I had to make a minor change behind the scenes, and they were very, very happy to do that for me. So I was really, really thrilled. So this is Crocus. This is a 36 count linen, and this is, I think, like an eighth. Well, maybe not even eighth, but very, very pretty. Try to get my arm in front of the light, the sun peeking through the window. So that's Crocus. What did I say? 36 count. And then this is Envy, another 36 count, another smaller piece. Very, very pretty. I like the tie-dye effect, but I realize it's kind of dead center. So knowing me, I try to get at least 2 projects out of these, so that tie-dye might get missed unless I get it a bigger, like 3/4 and then a couple of smaller, like clickers or something off of this. But really, really pretty. That one was called Envy. And then this one is a one of a kind on a 32 count Lugana, and this is a 4th. Yeah, those were both 8ths. Okay. This is a 4th. So it doesn't have a name, it just says one of a kind. But look at that, y'all. Absolutely gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. And I love this about Jessie, the way they dye their fabric, because, this you might want something, but maybe something smaller up here, but then you've got a nice, real pretty pale blue down here. So you've got so many options as far as where you want to stitch. So that's what I love about their fabric. And that real pretty green there. You just have options. Fantastic. And then the 4th and final piece that I have actually already kind of sliced up a bit, because I already have something planned, but I'm not going to talk about it here just yet, because it is a sal with someone, and I want to give them the opportunity to get their fabric and floss and stuff together before we before we both talk about it. But this is called Lucid Dream. So this was a fourth, but this is all that's left. So, absolutely just amazing, amazing tie-dye color here. But as you can see, I cut right down the other half. So the other half has a lighter still, kind of like this, light bluish splotch, but a much bigger portion, like right dead center, that I wanted to stitch on, because it had kind of the purple and the blue surrounding it. So very much like a, let's say like a reverse galaxy kind of, where you got the, but yeah, just absolutely gorgeous. So this has already been, I've still got another half of my fourth to work with, but yes, this is very much already been chosen and selected for one of my future stitching projects that you will all see about later. Okay, so in addition to that, I want to show you, because I briefly mentioned it earlier, this is a Notions app template. Let me see if I can show you. This is the Notion app, but this is a template designed by my friend, Oliver friend, Nati, Stitchy Nati, and it's great. It is, it's a template that is designed to use the functionality of Notion, the app, it's basically, what it's done is it's a database, a repository where you put all of your stitching information in it. And I mean all of it. So currently, what I've managed to do is, I think I've put 4 projects in here. Yes, okay, so I put my ink circles, I put my anxiety, that's my Judgy Caterpillar Burb, and then I had, but it's done, I had Ultraviolence in here too. So I'm using it, and we'll discuss this in plans here towards the end too. I'm using it to put in WIPs that I'm currently working on to keep track of my progress, as opposed to starting from the very beginning and putting in like all my floss database and all of my fabric database and all of my pattern database and all of my WIPs and kitted up projects and whatever database. I'm doing it WIP by WIP as I'm touching them. So, but yes, so far it's freaking amazing. But the nice thing is, so for instance, I will use Ultraviolence as an example. So it has all of my floss, my Roxy Floss Co. floss in there. And as a matter of fact, it doesn't. It has that's the floss that I use, but I never put the colors in there. But it has my Ashes to Ashes, my Fibralicious in there. So once you put that in there, it becomes part of the database. So when I go back and use another piece of my Ashes to Ashes for another project, I will already have it in here to select from. So, and then once it's used up, it's used up, and you can delete it from the database. But it's absolutely really freaking cool. So that was, I think that was the last WIP picture I kind of took. So yeah, so it is absolutely fantastic. I will put a link down below if you are interested. So basically, Nati has a Gumroad, where the template files are on her Gumroad, that you basically, once you've purchased it, you download it to your device, you install the Notions application app, and then you go in and basically find the template files, and it basically dumps it into the app, and then whatever. So having said that though, I actually created another file for my WIP Go, which we can talk about. I haven't given up on it, but it's kind of just lingering in the background. It's not a focus of mine for the rest of the year. The other thing I did, which I haven't done anything with it yet because I'm still trying to learn how to build like my own template. For those folks that are into tarot, I want to start keeping track of my tarot card pulls. So I did that, and then I also did one for my knitting whips. Now, funny thing is, and I'm going to get into this in plans in a little while too, because I'm very much a keep a journal, paper journal kind of person, this is just a supplemental way for me to keep track of these things. But I wanted to see if I could do it with my knitting projects as well. It won't be nearly as comprehensive, obviously, as the Stitchery template is that Nati built, but it will at least be something that I can keep track of. And part of that too is because I used to be a really big user of Ravelry, and then when they started having the issue, for those of you who are familiar with knitting and Ravelry at all, it's an online database, really is like a database of just every yarn enthusiast, if you will, even though I think there might be some sewing type stuff in there too, but primarily yarn based projects. I was thinking somebody at one time tried to do an extension of it that was like quilting and stuff like that. I'm getting off track. Ravelry was a place where you logged in, you created an account, you could basically put in your project, just kind of like this Notions template is. You put in your project, you tell it what project, what the title of the project is, like my Boneyard Shawl. I tell it that. It goes out and does a search and says, do you mean this Boneyard Shawl by Stephen West? And I go, why, yes it does. So then it links your project page to that project by that designer in the database. And then you tell it what kind of yarn you're using, and they go, oh, you're using Fiber Hustle, Watershed. Is it this Fiber Hustle? And you go, yes, it is. And they're like, okay, so then they link that up. So anyway, so everybody can see, if they want to go out and look at my project, see me and my projects, then they can do that. But if they want to go out and see the Boneyard Shawl and everybody's project that they have done, their Boneyard Shawl, just to see people's notes and what kind of yarn they used and what it looks like, and if they made adjustments or changes or how it looks different, or just to see different colors or different types of yarn, to see what works and what didn't, they can do that. But in there they would see my project if I had posted it. Anyway, right about the time the pandemic started, maybe just before that, maybe, they had gone through some Ravelry, the group of people that ran the site had gone through some administrative changes as far as people who were in charge and what they were in charge of, and someone who was involved with designing the website to do like this major overhaul with the graphics and the color scheme and all this. Well, it caused a huge problem. I was going to say, it wasn't nearly as big of a problem for me, but it caused enough of a uncomfortable feeling about their managing people's concerns that I just kind of, I still go out there, don't get me wrong. There are some designers that's the only place that they have to sell their designs, so I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to go in, support a designer, buy a pattern, and then get out. So that's not a problem. But one of the bigger complaints at the time was when they redesigned the entire website, they had changed like the fonts and the color scheme and everything. Well, the color in particular, color scheme change, was causing problems for people, and it's hard to explain, but I felt it, or I experienced it myself on a very, very minor level. But literally it was like you could not stay on this site because the color, the combination of colors, the combination of the new graphics, whatever it was, would literally, like, all of a sudden you could just tell you were getting a headache And a lot of people were like, they were giving them like low grade, like migraine, triggering migraines for them and stuff. And it's like, why would you? So everybody who responded and said, look, there's something wrong here. I don't know what it is. The people in charge at the time just kind of blew everybody off. Like, no, this is our new look. We love it. I don't know if I don't want to say they were gaslighting people, because I think that's too strong of a word, but I do feel like they weren't taking people seriously. Like, they thought it must be your computer, check your, I don't know what they were telling people, but they just flat out ignored complaints for like a really long time. And it took a large group of people to finally go, screw it, I'm not using your app anymore or your website anymore, because I can't, because it physically gives me issues. And so, yeah, and I did notice, like, good example, most of the lights in here that I use are fluorescent, right? Because they give you the best, LED, because they give you the best light for the least amount of energy. But one of these is actually fluorescent, bulb. The other one has three, I don't know if I can, has three distinctive colors. That is actually the fluorescent. It's like very blue. I only use that for lighting, like here in this case, for filming and taking pictures and stuff, because it is the most accurate, truest, color representation. But I don't stitch with those things on. They give me horrible headaches. And I do have, they're up here. I do actually have, for the longest, because one of these lamps is fluorescent only, and I got really bad headaches because of it. And I actually had bought blue light blocker glasses that I wore for like forever when I stitched. But since then I've got this other light now that's got color variants, so it's like a reading mode and a soft relaxing mode, and then the bright fluorescent mode. And I just don't use the fluorescent mode except for moments like this. So all that to say that I completely understood what the deal was with the Ravelry thing, but it was very hard to put into words. So anyway, Ravelry, I only use it for, like, I used to keep all of my products or my projects digitally there and then on paper in my journal. Now I don't go in there, like I said, unless there's like a designer that I want to buy a pattern from and buy it directly from them. And that's the only place that they sell. They don't have a website. They don't have a alternate. I do not use it to keep track of projects. I haven't done that in so long. Anyway. But yeah, so I'm going to try this. I'm going to try adding a knitting section to my Notions app. See if I can slowly build up a similar database for myself. And just keep track. In addition to my paper, my paper tracking. Which, that will lead me into my next... Well, let's do this. I've got one more thing I want to show you. Two, actually. In case you didn't notice, my t-shirt. This is a purchase that I made based on our Stitch for Pride prompts from July, which was all about music. One of the, I think, extended or moments of action, it looks like, for July was to check out Grimalkin Records. It's a nonprofit that supports specifically queer musical artists, specifically trans people of color. And they have a music fest every year. Fuzz all over my shirt. Music fest every year, just like Bonnaroo or something like that. But for their the artists that they produce, albums for and stuff. So the proceeds from this is like one of their branded, shirts or whatever, and the proceeds went towards providing funding so that they could, fund a music fest. And I think part of the proceeds too went towards specifically when they had their musical fest, they were going to provide a virtual, well, not virtual, like if they had their music fest one weekend, the next weekend they were going to like replay the musical fest, but like on YouTube, like like if you wanted to buy a virtual ticket essentially to the virtual weekend to watch it streamed, but part of the proceeds were to help pay for the infrastructure to do that. Like, putting it up on YouTube might not cost very much, you would think, but you still need equipment, you still need recording, you still need, all of the other things. You need people, behind the scenes manning the cameras and editing and doing all those things. So yeah, I was happy to do it. And I think the festival may have been last month. I think it's already passed this year, but it was worth it. And so then from there, I will add one more thing. So I discovered, and I want to get their Instagram, T.A. Salona. He is a trans artist that actually lives here in a suburb outside of DFW called Plano, Texas. If you're familiar with the area, you might have heard of it. But he had some really, really cute stained glass artwork, and he was going to be at an event in Denton up here kind of near me. So I just had mentioned he had posted pictures in his stories of the artwork he was doing. I was like, oh, that's so cute. Well, this is the one that got me, because I saw this and I was like, and I will tell you this too, I didn't even see it in color. It was still like the black and white, like just lines. The colors hadn't even been put in yet. But I messaged him on Instagram and I'm like, I might need to know about that frog. And he goes, well, which one? There's a frog mushroom and then there's a frog wizard. And I said, the wizard for sure. So he's like, well, it's this much for this size canvas and whatever. And I said, okay, great. I said, well, let me know when they're finished and we'll make arrangements. And at the time, I don't think he was still working on these so early on. I don't know that if he had announced that he was going to be in Denton yet. So I kind of thought, well, hopefully they're small enough or light enough that, I was definitely going to pay for the shipping if I needed to. But hopefully they're small enough and light enough that, they're easy to mail. Got that one. Well, then he posted another picture and he had all of these canvases spread out and all of these, and like I said, I think they were all still lined black and white at the time. But then I saw this one, so pretty, and this is actually more of this is a flat canvas, this is a bigger, so this one of course cost a bit more, but same thing. I was like, okay, I don't know, and there were like two of these that were like mirror images of each other. So I absolutely had to get this. And then, by that point, I said, okay, I need to, we need to meet up, whatever. And he knew that he was going to be in Denton. I said, oh, that's perfect. Because actually, he's going to be in Denton, I'm trying to think what weekend this was. This was the weekend of Saturday the 15th, July 15th. So I told him, I said, perfect. I said, Denton was really close to me because the following weekend he was going to be in Oak Cliff, which Oak Cliff is like South Dallas. And I was like, yeah, that's too far. I'd rather come to Denton. Plus I was really, I had not tried it yet, but there's a vegan, kind of restaurant. There used to be 3, one of which used to be like in Oak Cliff, but they closed that one. But there's also one in Fort Worth and there's one in Denton. And I've never been to the one in Denton, but they're Spiral Diner, and they're a vegan restaurant, and I absolutely love them. So it gave me a chance to go up there and get to try. I brought home vegan nachos, and they were so good. So good. I am still thinking about the nacho cheese. Like, it's made from, like, cashews, but they definitely put, like, taco seasoning in it or something. I was just like, I'm still trying to figure out how to get more nachos, because it's a drive. I mean, it's like 30 minutes one way for me to go get vegan nachos, but they were so good. And what was great was I had about 3 meals worth. I had 2 meals where I was able to actually split up everything in the container, like all the toppings and the chips and the cheese. But then the third day, I still had cheese left over. So I made another, like, I had like Tostitos, you know, whatever, and made like another set of like black beans and vegan nacho cheese. I swear if they sold that stuff in jars, I would buy just the cheese. It was so good. Anyway, so went to Denton, met TA, and he was just the nicest human being in the world, and I was so tickled to get to meet him in person. But I knew he had other, so I was there for the frog, the wizard, and then I was there for the hummingbird, but I knew that he had other stuff, so I thought, well, let me get there. I got there kind of right when it was like an arts festival, right when it started, so I knew I was probably ahead of most people. I mean, I'm an old lady. Like, I got out, and of course it's like 110 here. It's the middle of July, but got out. I think the art, the little market, like they were all up and down the street, and then like he was in like this bar called the Yellow Dog, but like the arts festival started at like 5 or 6 p.m. or something. I got there like right when it started because it was going to go till like 10 or 11 at night. I'm like, this is a college town. There are going to be all these college kids, you know, they're still doing summer school or whatever, crawling the streets, and I don't want to be here, and it's hot, and I just want to get my vegan nachos and my artwork and go home before everybody else gets there. So I think I definitely was like one of the first people. So, of course, he had all of his stuff. He does some beading, jewelry type stuff, chokers and bracelets and stuff like that. But he had some other artwork, and so I was like, okay, well, how much is this one? How much is this one? And I had cash, because cash is king. It made sure that I paid him directly. He was not charged fees for, you know, credit card transactions through PayPal or any of that kind of or Venmo or any of that kind of nonsense. So I made sure that I had enough cash that, in addition, he's got to GoFundMe. He's trying to get to Europe. I think he's trying to move, like truly move to like the UK somewhere. I don't know if it's in England, but somewhere in that region. So I wanted to also make sure that I had enough cash that if I bought a couple extra things, which of course would help towards that, but that I could actually donate like money directly, you know, give him cash, that I was like, this needs, the rest of this, whatever doesn't cover the artwork I'm buying, the rest of this is yours, but it goes towards your GoFundMe. So, with all that said, got the frog wizard, got the hummingbirds, got this magnolia, which I think is absolutely gorgeous. And I love it because even though like the frog is very much like this really is just absolutely, I mean, it just kind of depends on how you want to, you know, display it. Absolutely gorgeous. And then, so this, just as a reference, this is an 8-inch square. This is a 6-inch square. So to give you size, I think this hummingbird's probably also a 6-inch, yeah, 6-inch square. But the other thing I got was this teeny tiny little iris, and it's like 2 inches by 3 inches. So cute, so sweet. Same stained glass. So yeah, so I was totally thrilled. So, like I said, got to meet him. Super great. Oh, and he did sign all the backs of all of his artwork. So that was kind of cool too. So there's that. So yeah, so that was pretty much kind of my July, the way it went. And then briefly I will go into plans for this month and talk about everything else that might be coming up. Okay, so for August, I've actually done all of my Stitch for Pride learning and so on and so forth. I love this. If you know Dee, not so much these three, but this one, I think looks just like Timbit, for sure. The only thing I haven't done yet is the stitching prompt. I want to get the last name right. I know it's Polly, but I can't remember the first name. Or I can't remember the last name. Polly Murray. This was a fascinating learning this month. Polly Murray was not only a lawyer, an activist. They ended up becoming, going to theological seminary and becoming, I think, an Episcopalian priest. But it was absolutely fascinating. They're from North Carolina, which is really kind of interesting, seeing the North Carolina. So Polly grew up during like the civil rights era, was very much a person kind of pushed to the background of the civil rights movement simply because of their kind of gender nonconformity, but very much, involved very heavily, just not out front where people saw them, knew about them, except for what's fascinating is the people in North Carolina. Polly Murray was a big person in North Carolina. Anyway, all that to say, couldn't stop listening to the podcasts, watching the videos. It's absolutely fascinating. Apparently, the Polly Murray Foundation, which was one of the links in Dee's spreadsheet. When I clicked on that, I noticed that, and Dee I think mentions it too, that there's going to be an Amazon Prime documentary about Polly. They couldn't recommend it because they didn't know anything about it, but I noticed on the Polly Murray Foundation's website they had a trailer for it. So I will always list Dee down below. I think I usually put their link tree down there. It's just so you have access to everything, all of their patterns and whatever. But the Stitch for Pride doc is in there too. Link is in there too. You should really go check out if you're interested in Polly Murray. Dee also had a link to a bunch of Black civil rights books through Book Riot, and I found a great one that I'm going to read while I am knitting on my Red Rocks Blue Sky shawl, called Black on Both Sides, A Racial History of Trans Identity by C. Riley Snorton, which looked really good. It was on that list, so I'm very much looking forward to that. In addition, the Polly Murray Foundation had some merch you could buy. You should absolutely support directly the foundation, but they did have some really cute shirts, so hopefully the next one I record, I'll show you the shirts that I bought. But the stitching prompt for this month is to stitch on a piece that is part of a series or a piece that has many different parts. And so I was going around and around with myself about what I wanted to work on, because like a lot of cross stitch, everything's in parts and everything's a part of a series, but I do have a couple that I think I've narrowed it down to. One of which is I'd like to do some more Quirky Quakers, so I think that might be where I go, because I definitely Deanna has the Sink the Rich, the Orca, that was the fundraiser for Oceana Canada, so I bought that. But then I also bought, I'll show this because this was kind of part of my investments for the month. I also bought the crab, jellyfish, and octopus cottage garden threads. So I want to stitch those. So I've got like this whole like aquatic theme because I want to do my other, my other reverse seahorse. So I've got the seahorse, I've got the orca and the jellyfish and the octopus and the crab, and I'm going to put all those on here. Do you see what I see? Which was the June Fiberlicious fabric. So yeah, so I'm kind of thinking that's what I'm going to do for my Stitch for Pride this month. And then, in addition to that, Nati's stitching prompt that I was very much happy to be a part of. I'm actually going to have to put a picture here because I don't have it on my phone. I have it on my iPad, which is what I film with. Nati's stitching prompt that she came up with for each month of the year this year. Hers was arbitrary August. So I set up my Tiny Decisions wheel with everything small that either is a SAF, like a Quirky Quaker, or there's one or two other ones in there that are SAFs. But they either have to be less than 5,000 stitches total, like entire pattern, and if it could be less than like 3 or whatever, that would be great. But also everything else on here is a pattern that I have a whip that has less than 5,000 stitches left to stitch. So it's a pretty comprehensive wheel, but I think it'll give me a good. And so yeah, that's what I'm going to do for the remainder of the month. This month is anxiety is really the only thing, and then my ink circles. But other than that, I'm just going to spin that wheel and just whatever I land on. And I might, if I feel like pulling out my Judgy Caterpillar Burb Sal, I might stitch on that a little bit. But that's a Sal as in start along, not stitch along. I mean, it's a stitch along too, but it's definitely a start along because that's a big pattern. It's going to take me a while to finish that. But one of my other plans for this month is, and I'm recording this today because my original plan today was to actually go live on YouTube. And I put up a community post, but then I realized I don't know how that works because I didn't see my own community post. Like I have 2 separate YouTube channels. I never saw it. I had to go find it. But I put it up yesterday or Wednesday. It might have been yesterday. It might have been very last minute actually. But I was going to go live today because I had this plan that I'm going to talk about here in a minute. But then I realized, you know what, I don't know that this was a good night to do this because I had some other things going on kind of behind the scenes that I wasn't sure about timing and stuff. So I put this off, but I think I am possibly going to go live this weekend. So if you see this and you're cruising around YouTube the weekend of August 5th and 6th, 2023, I might be out there on YouTube live. My plan though was to go live because I want to get, I thought I don't like doing them, but I thought I might do it. This might be a good time to do it. Do a whip parade of like everything. And I can't even lift. There's a tote down here. Actually, there's two totes and and then a large like scrapbook box of whips and kits, things that I want to stitch. But definitely my whips, I want to go through all of them. I want to get them on the Stitchery template on Notion. But the other thing I want to do is, and I've already done this, now I haven't put it on Notion, my knitting whip thing that I started on Notion, but I did start it in here. I went through my journal. So this is my, this is like the second journal book, moleskin book behind my calendar journal that has everything, and this started in 2021, but this has everything I have ever done since the beginning of, since the beginning of 2021, craft related. So like all of my knitting, all of my YouTube episodes, all of my sewing projects, everything I kept track of. So what I started though with was my knitting whips, and went through, and this is one of the two books that I showed you last week that Denise, Black Ribbon Stitch Studio, her daughter, created, that I bought off of Amazon. But I made this my knitting whip book. And I went through and I wrote down everything that I know of, combing through my journal, that is still a whip, an open whip that I have not finished yet. And there aren't that many. I mean, what's funny is there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, 12. The last two of which are like not started yet. One is my Red Rock shawl. The other one is my Duet shawl that I bought. I think I showed y'all last time, or maybe time before, the Lola Bean set. So there are 10 definitely started, and of those, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. So half of them are socks. That's how bad I am. But 2 of them, one is my crochet blanket that I've shown before. The other one is my Northeasterlies, actually the first one in here, because it is long way away from being finished. Right now it just looks more like a necktie, not even that long. But this is what I want to do, but here. And I want to get everything accounted for, that I have an active whip, get it written down, kind of start over fresh, because like this, goodness, this gets to be a lot, because what ends up happening is I have pages where I've started projects and then cancel or mark them out, or I change my mind, or I UFO'd it, or whatever, and it gets to be a lot. But it also ends up being something where I have years and years and years, or months and months and months of pages. And even this is just my 2023. This is where my 2023 starts. And I've still got, this is knitting, this is knitting, this is cross stitch. 1, 2, 3, and I'm starting my 4th page of cross stitch, like new starts. Now, not all of these are new starts, but all of these are projects that I either intended or very soon will start, and I've already got 4 pages, and that's just 2023. So y'all can imagine how many back pages of like going in and figuring out the whips that. So that's what I'd like to do. Let's go back. So I was going to do a live and literally just do it in front of you all. Pull out every whip, go through it. I probably won't sit there and literally notate everything in this book, but go out, pull it out, show you it, tell you, what it's stitched on, who it's by, whatever, and maybe even make a decision as to whether or not I want to keep it. And then if I do, then start fresh with a whip book, because I'm getting to the point now where I've got to, I am in a good frame of mind where I want to finish all the things. Like, I will continue to start new things too, but I want to work on the things that I want to get done. I mean, I've got so many things started that I want to touch them all, but I need to know practically what I'm working with, and if it means starting with all the things that are almost done and getting all those done, and then going back and working on the larger. I mean, honestly, just do a hard reset on what have I got, what do I still want to finish, what do I still want to accomplish, and in what order. But the other thing was, it would open me up for other things for Arbitrary August if I go, oh yeah, I completely forgot about that, I want to work on that. The other thing it will do has helped me get them in the Notions app. And again, I wouldn't do that during the live, but it would give me a good foundation for, okay, I've got all this out, let's go ahead and put all this in. And again, it wouldn't be, it would just be getting all the whips in there. And this is something that at least visually all in one place without having to flip through a book or a journal or whatever would hold me visually accountable. Because I think once I saw like a list of like, let's say 100, I'd be surprised if y'all want to set an over under on if the number's over or under 100. I'm fair game. But let's say there's 100 on that template on that Notions app, and I'm like, holy shnikes. So that's the other thing, is I think seeing a visual list of just like everything would bring me closer to reconciliation, like reconciling what I've got to do with what I think is worth my time in doing. So that's kind of where I'm at. So it might just be, it will definitely still be arbitrary August. It might just be though that, you know what? Where is it? I might have to create a new hashtag. This just cracks me up because it just occurred to me. I might have to do the hashtag anxiety August because I think this project is going to give me anxiety. But then also this may be the only project that I end up stitching because I get myself so overwhelmed or wound up about trying to take accountability for how many whips I've got. I don't know. But yes, if y'all could see, there are two of those. I'm going to say they're like the 32 quart. I don't think they're I think the 64 quart totes are like huge. But I've got two of those. I think they're 32 quart totes. Now I will say the bottom one is knit. Like one of them's knitting stuff, and then the top one is cross stitch. But it is a ton of like kitted up and whips. But then I've also got this one. This is like one of those scrapbooking storage containers, and this I've since I'm showing it to you, this is all my queer. Actually, it's not all, but it's a good chunk of all queer designer whips. D. Kari, Marumi Crafts, Mislaid Pages. Yeah, so I mean, just this alone, and that might be a fun if anybody would be interested in that. Go through all just my queer designer whips. That'd be kind of interesting, wouldn't it? So yeah, so that's it. That's me. This is still going to be longer than I wish it would be, but I think it's going to be shorter than the last two. Hopefully. So, y'all stay cool. It is. I keep looking at I don't bother looking at the weather, but I keep looking at the weather because the weather's always there. Like, it's terrifying just how, like, y'all. Hold on. That's all we are anymore. Probably till, if this heat breaks, it will probably be, it might be Labor Day. It might not. But we don't officially stay, if we're going to get cool, we don't officially stay cool until October. So we've definitely got 2 more months of this, month and a half of this at least. Usually there's some event, either a rain event, a cold front, something that moves through that breaks the heat. But yeah, it's terrible, y'all. So, but I wish you nothing but good times, happy thoughts. kindness. Take care of each other. Take care of yourselves. Stay hydrated. Stay, stay out of the sun. Sun's just there to do damage as far as I'm concerned. It's not our friend. As much as we all need the vitamin D, we don't all need skin cancer. So, it is what it is. So, yeah, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And I will hopefully see you again in another month. Y'all, stay safe. Bye for now.